The introduction of the JCM 800 in 1981 gave Marshall a new lease of life, and with it, a new generation of musicians wanting to explore their own signature guitar tone.
If this was going to be a performance here, I might put an X on the spot where it goes into like, let's see. All right, well, that's going to go forever. So I'll put an X right there.
I can remember there were some more significant things occurred in the late 70s, early 80s than I think prior and maybe afterwards as well. Like you had Van Halen come out, who revolutionized it. Then when you thought it couldn't get any better, then you had Randy Rhoads come out, for example.
By the mid-80s, Marshall's reputation had spread across the Atlantic, attracting the biggest names who were ready to take the Marshall to the max.
The American musicians embraced it so much, and they actually took it to another level. If a young British musician had 2 or 3 Marshalls on stage, they had 10.
It used to be in Los Angeles in the early 80s, wanted guitar player, must have Marshall, Gibson, and a car.
Whether it's a pop song, a disco song, a rock song, a metal song, I mean, whatever genre the music is, God only knows how many recordings a Marshall has been on.
These are bands who suddenly started to sell tens of millions of albums with what one could call big hair rock, glam rock, call it what you will. Great anthemic songs, great image, and a sense of power. And the Marshall amp was part of it because they were proud to be photographed and filmed with Marshalls. They had them on stage everywhere you went.
As rock music evolved in the 80s, from rock to hard rock to heavy metal, so Marshall evolved with it, meeting the needs of those guitar players, and they were the amplifier of choice and becoming louder and being seen on stage to be louder.
For me, it's all about the energy and the confidence to be able to go up there and just do your thing, right? So I spend very little time tweaking amps and doing all that. I set it up, it takes me 5 minutes. You know, it's either it sounds good or it doesn't, you know? I remember being intimidated by it the first time it was somebody else's amp, and you plug it in, and it was above and beyond anything I'd ever used, so it was a little bit out of my sort of experience.
It's not a cure for anything. If you suck and you buy a Marshall, you'll still suck, but you'll suck louder and with better tone than you've ever sucked before in your life.
The respect and adulation for the elder statesmen of rock has increased manyfold. They are now held up with great esteem and awe rather than being regarded as boring old farts.
Psychologically, you knew that what was coming out of those speakers sounded great. You know, we didn't use pedals. I might have had a Crybaby or a wah-wah pedal or something. But you just knew that you had a great guitar sound because you were trying to emulate your heroes from before. It gave you that confidence to know that you went out there, and as soon as you hit a chord, you know, the crowd jumped up and bang, you were there. You were rock stars.
So, I mean, are you prepared for this? Like this, it's tried and tested. You know what you're going to get with it. You know, it does what it says on the tin. Well, it doesn't actually say kick ass on there, but that would be quite good to have on there, wouldn't it? Marshall kick ass, yeah. But it does. It does what you want it to do.
My particular thing is always about a hard-driven but warm, natural kind of a sound. And that was what brought me to Marshall in the first place, because it had the volume and the gain and all that to rock as hard as it could anybody could ever possibly want.
Still today there's new bands coming out with new music, using a Marshall and saying, we do this. This is how we do it, and this is how we sound.
There's kind of no way to separate the look and the sound and the attitude. And rock and roll comes with all those three things with a Marshall stack behind it.
Marshall is gargantuan. All my favorite guitar players have always, or at some point, played through a Marshall and given us that kind of classic tone. So they have the history behind them in being pioneers in creating sounds and creating tone.
You take a 14-year-old just getting into metal and you show them a picture from 1971-72 of a band on stage using a Marshall amp, they'll connect with it. You take a 14-year-old in 1971-72 and show them what equipment was on stage in the 1930s, they'll just look at it and go, alien. And that's the big difference. Marshall has transcended.
In the next episode, the end of an era.